today is going to be a video of my first Civil War reenactment that I've ever been to. We went to the city of Elgin where they do a reenactment of the Battle of Atlanta every year. This was my very first year actually going to a Civil War reenactment, so I wanted to share my first time experiencing this with you guys. I hope the sound isn't too crappy. I'm gonna give you a forewarning. It was really loud when I was filming this, and the volume on the editing video may still be increased to 10, so you may want to adjust your volume to your whatever device you're watching this on. Just to give you a warning, it was really loud. I had to have headphones while I was there. So anyway, I hope you enjoy this video. Love you guys.
Of one of the many battles that took part in 1864 for the town of Atlanta, Georgia. Atlanta, Georgia was an important rail hub. It was part of the connectivity between the Western Confederate States and the Eastern Confederate States. When the war in 1861 began, General Winfield Scott, the Grand Commander of the Army of the United States, came up with something called the Anaconda Plan. What his plan was to strangle the South. He said that the war would take 4 years and 1 million men. He was right on the time frame. He was wrong on the number of troops. By the end of the war, the Union Army would number 2.5 million. In a population of only 30 million, that's a significant portion of the population being put under arms. In the southern states, with only 7 million people, of which about 3.5 million were African American slaves, they would field an army of over 800,000. So this was one of the largest concentration forces imaginable with such small societies. Today we are standing looking over the field near Atlanta, Georgia. In 1863, the Union began a march down towards Atlanta, starting with the Tullahoma campaign under General Rosecrans. General Rosecrans captured the town of Chattanooga, which was both a rail hub and a river hub on the Tennessee River. So with the fall of Chattanooga, they had successfully begun the operation to cut the South in half. During that same year, General Grant had moved and successfully captured the Confederate town of Vicksburg, and thus, in the words of Abraham Lincoln, the father of all rivers flows unvexed to the sea. So the North had control of the Mississippi River now, and now they were seeking to further subdivide the South and divide and conquer. The Southern armies, originally under command of Braxton Bragg, counterattacked at Chattanooga in September of 1863 at the Battle of Chickamauga, drove the Federals back to Chattanooga, but the Federals held that position, and when Rosecrans was replaced by Grant, they counterattacked. Grant was made commander of all the Union armies and went east to Washington, and left command to a good friend, William Tecumseh Sherman. Under Sherman, there were 3 armies: the Army of the Tennessee, the Army of the Cumberland. What he was going to do was begin the march to Atlanta, following the pattern of General Rosecrans. Every time the Confederates would erect a defensive position, he would outflank it and force their retreat. In this way, he hoped to drive the Confederates all the way back to Atlanta, where he could besiege the town, cut their supply lines, and force them to surrender, as Grant had done so successfully in Vicksburg. After the Battle of Chickamauga and the failure of the Confederates to recapture Chattanooga, President Davis replaced Braxton Bragg with General Joseph Johnston. Johnston was probably not his first choice, but he had been a successful commander. Johnston conducted a series of retreats and defenses all along the line until the Battle of Kennesaw Mountain. The Federals, doing flank marches and flank marches and flank marches, were being frustrated and wanted to fight. Against his better judgment, William Sherman launched an attack against the strong Confederate positions at Kennesaw Mountain. It did not go well, so again he began the maneuvers of flank, and Johnson continued to retreat. Frustrated with Confederate fallbacks, General Davis turned to John Bell Hood as the Confederate commander. As the Confederates were falling back to the defensive works at the city of Atlanta, General Johnson had devised a plan to attack the federal flank at a place called Peachtree Creek. He launched his attack. Hardee's corps was delayed in getting into position, and the brilliant General McPherson, recognizing the danger, moved his reserves and checked the Confederate advance. On the next day, John Bell Hood, whose military strategy involved attack and then attack again, and this is the Battle of Atlanta. It is May 22nd. 1864. The Confederate Army is going to attempt to drive a wedge through the corps, or actually army, of General McPherson. McPherson had a brilliant career. He was well thought of, highly respected by his men, and highly respected by his superiors. He was probably the one corps commander that most had the trust of William Tecumseh Sherman. So the Confederates have fallen back into their defensive works. They are within sight of the steeples of Atlanta, and now they are going to try to break the impending siege by trying to, although outnumbered, hoping that they can isolate elements of the Federal Army and defeat the Federal Army in detail. That is to say, attacking smaller pieces of it with overwhelming force, destroy it. But they're up against a bold commander who can probably read their strategy. And this is where we are at the start of the Battle of Atlanta. At the same time that the Battle of Atlanta is going on, Grant has been conducting something called the Overland Campaign. He is marching south towards Richmond. So with this, two campaigns begin the death knell of the Confederacy. But there is a third campaign, which is every bit as vital as these two. It is the election campaign of 1864. It pits current President Abraham Lincoln, running for re-election, against the former commander of the Army of the Potomac, George B. McClellan. McClellan had been a great success as a commander of the Potomac. He had not lost a single battle, probably because he avoided fighting too many of them. As Lincoln said, McClellan had a severe case of the slows, and at one point sent him a telegram, "Sir, if you're not going to use the Army, I would like to borrow it." McClellan loved the Army. He trained it, developed it, gave the Union Army a great sense of pride and purpose, but he failed to realize what that purpose was. And so after a series of commanders, McClellan, Hooker, Pope, Burnside, finally they fell upon George Gordon Meade as the Confederate armies were marching to that little town of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. So the war in the East was not going exceedingly well for the North, and Lincoln was concerned that that would impact his re-election. So he called on the most successful general they had up to this point, Ulysses S. Grant, brought him east to oversee all of the military operations. So three major campaigns are going on this year. General Sherman attacking, hoping to capture Atlanta in time to have an impact upon the presidential campaign. Grant launching his attack through the wilderness, along the James River, and towards Richmond, Virginia. The South's situation in manpower, weaponry, supply, food is getting desperate. And so that's the situation we find ourselves in the spring of 1864. General McPherson has placed his pickets out, a skirmish line to probe the Confederate positions, harassment, while he tries to determine where a weak spot will be. Where can I hit them? Where can I break through? They've begun the bombardment of the Confederate position. What you're looking at is a typical way of beginning a battle is to open up with a bombardment. Using artillery to smash the defensive lines of the enemy. As you watch the artillery, you'll notice the procedures of loading. First of all, he will sponge the gun, clear the gun of any residue. Then he will put in a powder charge around the home. It will open the back of the charge with a brass prick to allow for the friction timer to ignite the powder, and that is the procedure for loading the artillery. Artillery typically is going to be armed with three types of weapons. Number one, they're going to be using a solid shot. Solid shot will have a great deal of distance, and solid shot will also be used to open up or destroy fortifications or masonry forts. More common during the Civil War is the use of exploding shells. Now, those of you who've ever watched a movie, Civil War movie, you've probably seen troops running across the field and these ground charges blowing up in front of them. That's actually not what it looks like. The shell was designed not to hit the ground, bury itself, and throw dirt on people. The shell was designed to airburst over the troops, raining down shrapnel and bits of metal onto the soldiers. So now we see Federal skirmish line being driven back, and we see General McPherson is coming forward. He is here to assess the situation. It's not unusual for a major general and a corps commander to actually go out with his staff to do their own reconnaissance to understand and see what's going on. As he does so, and the Confederates continue their advance, General McPherson, the commander of the corps, is struck and killed. Actually, he is severely wounded, but to the point of being mortally wounded. And the Confederates continue and drive past the Federal position. All right, as the Confederates advance, they come upon the body of General McPherson. One of the things they did was, out of the honor of war, recognizing that they had killed a high-ranking officer, not actually sure who, they took his personal possessions and sent them back to the lines to be returned. At the same time, one of the Confederates picked up his haversack and took the haversack, not realizing that in that haversack was all of General Sherman's orders that he had issued to the Army. A valuable bit of intelligence that would have been very useful to John Bell Hood, but instead of taking the haversack and sending it back with the personal possessions, he held on to it, and during the course of the Federal counterattack, he lost that possession of that, and thus General Sherman's battle plans were saved. Okay, as the Federals begin to push, the Confederate skirmishers begin to fall back. Confederates have brought up their infantry to continue to push the attack. Now you notice on the far end of the field some Federal cavalry. Cavalry played an important role in the American Civil War. Cavalry was the eyes and ears of the Army. Their primary responsibility was reconnaissance. In 1864, I hate to say this, but if you tried to use your Google Maps, you weren't going to get 0 bars and not going to get any response. You were lucky if you had a map, period. So when the armies are moving into unusual territories or territories they're not personally familiar with, they have no idea where they're at. They don't know which road leads to Atlanta and which road leads to Tallahassee. They are totally at the mercy of their cavalry to reconnaissance their directions and find where the enemy is. And so they will deploy the cavalry and utilize the cavalry to go find the road, find the location of the enemy, but at the same time, the enemy is going to deploy their cavalry, and their cavalry is to steer their movements and to block the enemy's cavalry from learning where their directions are. Cavalry is also going to be used to ride around the enemy, to find their supply depots, to destroy the bridges behind their lines, cut up their railroad lines, make sure that the army is not receiving supplies. Nathan Bedford Forrest was one of the masters of doing that. The cavalry is typically armed. Mounted on a horse, they are armed with a short weapon called a carbine. In the early part of the war, these were primarily single-shot weapons, usually either a muzzleloader or breech-loading type of weapon. There were about 20 different types of cavalry carbines at the start of the war, but as the war progressed, 3 became the most noted. The Spencer The Sharps rifle, which was a breech-loading single-shot weapon. The Burnside, which was also a single-shot weapon. And finally, the Spencer repeating rifle. The Spencer repeating rifle was a weapon that held 7 rounds. The 7 rounds were loaded through the rear of the weapon in a magazine tube, and thus it could be fired much more rapidly than any of the other weapons on the field. The Spencer repeating rifle, about 100,000 would be manufactured during the war years, coming out primarily in 1863 and 1864. It was a war-winning weapon. When you look at the Federal infantry, shoulder to shoulder, firing volleys, this was done to maximize the impact of their weapons. They are carrying a 3-band single-shot muzzle-loading musket. It takes 9 steps to load the weapon. You must first pull the cartridge from your cartridge box, tear open the cartridge with your teeth, which means you needed to have 4 good front teeth. You tore open the cartridge, poured the powder down the barrel, put the seat at the ball, drew your ramrod, rammed the cartridge home, returned your ramrod because you're going to need it for the next shot. At that point, you'll place a percussion cap onto the nipple of the weapon so it is now finally ready to fire. And then you'll wait for the command, ready, aim, fire. A good soldier with a clean weapon could probably do that process about 3 times a minute. A lot of times we're asked, why did they stand shoulder to shoulder and shoot at each other like that? It does look a little strange. Again, the reasoning is simple. It is firepower. By standing shoulder to shoulder across a broad area, they can maximize the amount of rounds going at the enemy. If you deploy as the Confederates have, spread out, they're covering less terrain with less people. They are throwing 3 rounds a minute. Let's say you have an area of 100 yards. I've deployed a skirmish line. I've put about 30 people covering that 100 yards. I am going to be firing 9 rounds a minute, or 3 rounds a minute, times 30 people, that's 90 rounds a minute heading towards the enemy. My enemy is standing shoulder to shoulder across that same 100 yards. They will have 128 people standing in line. But they're in 2 lines. That makes it roughly 250 people firing 3 rounds a minute. I'm sending 90 rounds to them. They are kindly returning 750 rounds a minute back at me. Simple mathematics. So that is why you will see the soldiers standing shoulder to shoulder. It is a simple mathematical equation. So now the Federals are going to go forward. You can see they put their flag forward to signify that they are beginning to march. And forward march as they go forward, pushing on the Confederate position. Having driven the Confederates from the field, they're hoping that as the Confederates retreat, that they may have an opportunity to do a pursuit, and in doing so, be able to overwhelm the Confederate positions and capture all of those lovely trench works. The Federals begin the march. Having lost General McPherson, it should be noted they lost some of their more aggressive commanders. So a good opportunity to advance quickly and overwhelm the Confederates while they're still in the confusion of retreat might very well be lost. And the Federals may find themselves assaulting positions that are well prepared and well ready. So we can see the Federals were moving in. They're trying to bombard the Confederate position, break open, do as much damage to the Confederate position with artillery. They come forward with their infantry. As we were saying earlier, the artillery has three types of weaponry, three types of ordnance that they will use. The first, of course, was a solid shot. The second, a exploding shell. Last but not least, one of the most deadly is canister. Canister is taking a can, filling it with usually 69 caliber ball, usually 36 balls to a canister. They would load that powder, put the canister in behind it, and what you've created is a very large 4-inch bore shotgun. Canister is one of the most deadly things. It had a range out to about 600 yards, but most effective the closer the enemy got to you. So that when a discharge of canister ripped through the ranks of troops, it would make rather large holes in the ranks of the advancing enemy, killing and maiming many. One of the most devastating weapons of the American Civil War. As you can see, the Federal casualties within canister range of the artillery starting to pile up. On a battlefield like this, cavalry played a secondary role. Its primary role was, of course, reconnaissance, screening actions. One of the great lines in the American Civil War is the infantry always said they never saw a dead cavalryman. Cavalrymen were not really useful in the role that they played during the Napoleonic War. In the period of the Napoleonic Wars, cavalry was a shock arm. That is to say, cavalry was the equivalent of a tank back in the 1815s. The rifled musket extended the range of the battlefield, and this directly impacted the role of cavalry. A cavalry squadron forming up at 500 yards for a charge would have been opened fire upon immediately, and they would have been well hard pressed to be able to go attacking a formed body of infantry. They would have been destroyed before they got within 100 yards. So the role of cavalry on the battlefield changed significantly. Typically, cavalry would fight dismounted. If they were needed to hold a position, they would move up to that position, dismount, put their riders behind, their horses behind their lines, so that if they needed to retreat, they could fall back, mount up, and get out of there. But they would fight dismounted because they were much more effective dismounted using their carbine than trying to use a weapon from a platform as unstable as a horse, very harder to hit. your target. So we can see the infantry continuing to slug it out. Now again, pay attention as the infantry loads and fires, if you can see them. What they're going to be doing is putting a powder charge into the musket. They would ram home the bullet. They would bring the musket up, put it on the half-cock, put in percussion cap. So when you meet the soldiers after the battle, take a look at their uniforms, take a look at their accoutrements. You'll notice that there is a cartridge box which hangs on the right hip of the soldier, and there is a small cap pouch on the belt of the soldier which contains the percussion caps that they're going to use to fire their weapon. So make sure you talk to the soldiers after the battle. I'd like to remind everybody that if you're all standing there, you have this bright yellow wristband on. At 7 o'clock, we will be reopening the site, and if you have a wristband, you don't have to pay to get in. We're going to be doing candlelight tours. It's kind of magical at night when the sun starts to go down and the candles are lit. You'll be able to tour the trenches. You'll be able to tour the camps, talk with the soldiers again, and then at about 9 to 9:30, as darkness descends, we'll have our artillery in full view for what's called a night fire. So you can watch the flash of the guns, and a spectacular sight if you've never seen night firing before. Please come out. It's enjoyable, and you've already paid for the privilege. So as you can see, the federal position, they haven't really pushed forward much beyond that range, trying to engage, trying to determine if there's a weak spot. Determined that his current position is not achieving any results. The Federals are moving. If you look on the field, you can see the devastating capability. Now, finding out some of the differences in the weaponry between the Revolutionary War and the American Civil War. The American Revolutionary War, the primary weapon was the Brown Bess musket, or the French Charleville. The French Charleville, a smoothbore 69 caliber flintlock. The Brown Bess, a 75 caliber flintlock. A flintlock is a weapon that is fired when a piece of flint strikes a piece of steel. The flint scrapes off microscopic portions of the steel, which immediately oxidizes, which is really called a spark. That spark hits the pan, which has black powder in it, ignites. The ignition in the pan travels through the touch hole and ignites the main powder charge in the barrel and drives a solid round ball down the barrel. This, of course, is a smooth bore, which means that the round is somewhat significantly smaller than the barrel. There's no rifling in the barrel. The ball bounces down the barrel and flies out, going whichever merry way it wants based on where it bounced last. A typical smoothbore musket had an accurate range out to about 50 to 75 yards. That is to say, at 50 to 75 yards, you probably had a half-decent chance of actually hitting a man-sized target. At about 100 yards, that's probably about 50-50. At 125 yards, well, that's why you're standing shoulder to shoulder firing in mass. And at 150 yards, even if you hit somebody, it's probably not traveling at terminal velocity. Translated, hit them in the chest and bounced off. During the American Civil War, thanks to a French artillery officer by the name of Claude Minié, or an Englishman by the name of Greener, depending on whose arguments you want to listen to, invented something called the Minié ball. You may have heard it referred to as the mini ball. It is neither a ball nor is it mini. It's a rather large bullet with a hollow base. That base will expand when you fire the gun. It will expand into the rifling of that gun. The rifling will in turn give a spin to the bullet. It will stabilize the bullet. It will allow it to travel significantly further with greater accuracy. Now, a Civil War soldier armed with an Enfield or a Springfield 3-band musket probably stood about a 50-50 chance of hitting somebody at 300 yards. That's a long distance. But when we talk about the ability to hit, we're going to talk about something called effective range. And effective range means that standing shoulder to shoulder, firing 3 rounds a minute, the ability of that unit to have an impact upon the enemy is significant. So the effective range of the American Civil War goes out to about 400 yards. Most of your battles in the Napoleonic era are going to be decided at about 50 to 70 yards, with the armies exchanging volleys until one feels that it has gotten the upper hand. They will fix bayonets and they will go forward. If the enemy is shaken badly enough, they will probably start running. If they are in solid formation and still steady, they will begin to fire another volley or two into the attackers and respond by fixing bayonet themselves. The timing of that attack was critical. If your enemy was shaken and you're able to launch a bayonet attack, you've won the day. If you launch that bayonet attack and the enemy is solid and steady, they are going to deliver upon you severe punishment as you cross that field and be ready to receive your attack in formation. In the American Civil War, your typical battle range is going to be out to about 200 yards. That's 2 football fields in length. The bayonet has its uses as a candle holder, as a tent stake, and, believe it or not, as a can opener. If you go hit the sutlers, you'll see that they sold the soldiers to supplement their rations. The sutlers would have canned goods such as peaches, lobster. Believe it or not, Van de Kamp's pork and beans was actually popular at this time. They've been around for a while. All right, so the Federals have responded. They repulsed and prevented the Confederates from dividing their line. Their hopeful counterattack was unsuccessful. They did not break the Confederate positions around Atlanta today, but they did prevent the Confederates from making any advance or headway in alleviating the Summing siege of Atlanta. So the Confederates are still stuck within their works as the noose tightens around the city of Atlanta. I want to thank you all for coming out and watching the first part of the Battle of Atlanta. Please come out tomorrow. We'll be doing a second segment, the Battle of Azariah Church. Thank you very much.